Listen closely. We don't have much time. The situation is dawai. Every second counts, so pay attention and follow my instructions precisely.
I'm 88 years old, and only now do I understand how waiting for the right time slowly erased my life. I don't say that with drama. I say it the way you state a fact you can't change, like the weather or a scar you stopped touching years ago. I'm sitting in a small room that used to be my wife's sewing room. She's been gone 7 years. The light still comes in the same way it always did, but there's no one here to notice it with me. At this age, time feels different. It doesn't rush anymore. It just stands there watching you. I'm not telling this story to make peace with myself. That ship sailed. I'm telling it because when you get this old, you realize your silence doesn't matter anymore, but the truth might. Most of my life looked reasonable from the outside. I worked. I paid bills. I showed up when I was expected to. If you'd asked me at 40 whether I was wasting my life, I would have laughed. I was responsible. I was careful. I was waiting for things to settle down. That was always the phrase. Once things settled down. In my 20s, I waited to travel because I needed to establish myself first. In my 30s, I waited to slow down because the kids needed stability. In my 40s, I waited to speak honestly because it wasn't the right time to rock anything. In my 50s, I waited to rest because retirement was coming. I was always almost there. I grew up believing patience was a virtue. That good things came to those who waited. No one told me that some things only come to those who interrupt their own lives. I married young, not out of passion, but out of timing. She was kind, steady, and she wanted the same quiet future I thought I wanted. We didn't fight much. That's what people admired about us. But we also didn't talk about the things that made us uneasy. When something felt wrong, I told myself it would pass. When she seemed distant, I told myself she was tired. When I felt the urge to say something honest, something risky, I swallowed it. I thought silence was harmless. I thought delay was maturity. I worked at the same company for 38 years. I wasn't unhappy there. I also was alive. Every morning was the same coffee, the same drive, the same desk. I told myself consistency was a blessing, and maybe it was, but consistency can become a hiding place. There were moments, small ones, where I felt a tug inside me. A feeling that something was being postponed that couldn't actually wait. Like the afternoon my daughter asked me to come to her school play. I told her I'd try. I stayed late at work instead because leaving felt irresponsible. She didn't cry. She just stopped asking after that. Or the Sunday my wife suggested we take a trip somewhere we'd never been. I told her maybe next year when things were less busy. Next year never came for us. None of these moments felt important at the time. That's the dangerous part. Life doesn't warn you when something is the last time. It doesn't announce when a habit becomes a pattern or when a pattern becomes a life. I thought regret would feel loud when it arrived. I imagined it as panic or grief or some sharp realization, but it came quietly, so quietly I didn't notice it moving in. It showed up as distance, as polite conversations, as being thanked instead of needed. My children grew into adults who respected me. They did not confide in me. I was proud of them from a distance. I didn't know how to step closer anymore. I told myself I would fix things when I had more time, when work eased up, when the stress passed. But stress doesn't pass, it just changes its shape. The turning point didn't come as a dramatic collapse, it came as a phone call. My wife had been tired for months, we both ignored it. There was always something more immediate. The doctor used words like advanced and aggressive. I nodded as if nodding could rewind anything. We sat together in silence afterward, not the comfortable kind, the kind that finally tells the truth. She asked me very calmly if I was happy with our life. I opened my mouth to give the careful answer, then I closed it. Because for the first time I understood that careful answers were what got us there. She died 8 months later. I had time then, all the time I'd been waiting for. Retirement came. The house grew quiet. The calendar emptied out. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't delayed living, I had replaced it. I replaced it with preparation, with obligation, with the idea that real life would begin later. But later is not a place you arrive. It's a story you tell yourself to stay comfortable. There are things now that cannot be repaired. Conversations that will never happen. Versions of myself that never got to exist. I can't go back and be the man who spoke sooner. I can't be the father who showed up differently. I can't be the husband who asked harder questions while there was still time to answer them. All I can do is sit with the weight of knowing that nothing terrible stopped me. No tragedy, no great failure, just waiting. If you're listening to this, I won't tell you what to do. I don't have that right. I can only tell you what I learned too late. Waiting feels safe. It feels wise. It feels like you're being responsible. But years don't ask for permission, they just take what you don't use. I don't have many years left now. I feel that in my body and the way mornings come harder than they used to. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of how long it took me to show up while I was alive. That's the truth. I don't know exactly when people stopped expecting things from me. It wasn't sudden. It felt like a gradual lowering of the volume until one day I realized the room was quiet because no one was waiting for my response anymore. After my wife died, people checked in at first. Neighbors brought food, family called, then weeks passed, then months. Everyone assumed I was managing because that's what I'd always done, managed, handled, endured. I had built my whole identity around being dependable. And dependable men don't complain, they don't interrupt, they don't ask for more, they wait. I used to think loneliness came from being alone, but that's not true. Loneliness comes from being unseen for a long time. I had spent decades training the people around me not to look too closely, not to expect honesty, not to ask uncomfortable questions, so when the house emptied out, it didn't feel like something new. It felt like the final stage of something I'd been practicing my whole life. I would sit at the kitchen table in the mornings, coffee going cold, and think about how many times I'd told myself, not now. Not now to speak. Not now to risk. Not now to admit I wanted something different. I remembered conversations that never happened. The night I almost told my wife I felt like I was disappearing. The afternoon I considered calling my son just to say I missed him and decided it might sound needy. The letter I started writing to my brother after our falling out, then folded up and never sent. I always believed there would be a better moment, a cleaner moment, a moment where saying the truth wouldn't complicate anything. But truth always complicates things. That's not a flaw. That's the price. When I look back now, I don't see a life ruined by mistakes. I see a life shaped by hesitation. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't absent in obvious ways. I was just slightly delayed over and over again. And delay is easy to justify. Delay sounds responsible. It sounds mature. No one warns you that delay has momentum. Once you get used to waiting, acting starts to feel unnatural. Speaking feels disruptive. Wanting feels embarrassing, so you keep waiting. For permission, for certainty, for conditions that never arrive. I used to think courage was about big moments, grand gestures, turning points. Now I know courage is smaller than that. It's the sentence you don't rehearse, the call you make without knowing how it will land, the moment you choose presence over polish. I didn't choose those things, not often enough. And the cost wasn't paid all at once. It was paid in fragments, in the way my marriage became polite instead of intimate, in the way my children learned to solve their problems without me, in the way my own thoughts grew quieter as if they knew no one was listening. Old age doesn't arrive with wisdom automatically. That's another lie. It arrives with clarity, and clarity can be brutal. You see your life as a whole instead of as a series of busy days. You see patterns instead of intentions, outcomes instead of excuses. I see now that I was always preparing for a life I never entered, preparing to be less tired, preparing to be more confident, preparing to be ready. Ready for what? I'm not sure. There's a strange grief that comes with realizing you were free more often than you believed, that no one was actually stopping you from speaking, from choosing, from changing direction. I wasn't trapped, I was cautious, and caution can hollow you out if you let it. Some nights I imagine alternate versions of my life, not better ones, just braver ones. A version where I told my wife the truth before illness forced honesty on us. A version where I let my children see me uncertain instead of always composed. A version where I chose presence even when it felt inefficient. Those lives don't haunt me. They instruct me. They remind me that life doesn't disappear in one dramatic moment. It fades while you're busy waiting for the right conditions. If I'm honest, part of me believed waiting would protect me from regret. That if I never acted too boldly, I'd never fail too loudly. I was wrong. Regret doesn't come from doing the wrong thing. It comes from never doing the thing that mattered to you. Now at 88, my days are slow. I notice things I never did before. The sound of birds in the morning. The way the light changes in the afternoon. Presence came to me eventually, but it came alone. There's gratitude here too. I don't deny that. I had food on the table. I watched my children grow up. I shared years with a woman who loved me the best way she knew how. But gratitude and sorrow can exist together. That's something youth doesn't always understand. If you're younger than me, and chances are you are, I won't tell you to stop waiting altogether. Waiting is part of life, but I will tell you this quietly. If there is something you keep postponing because you think it will be safer later, pay attention to that. Not with urgency, with honesty. Some doors don't close loudly. They just slowly become walls. I don't have many conversations left in me. My voice gets tired, my memory drifts. That's why I'm saying this now, not to scare you, not to teach you, just to leave the truth where someone might find it. Waiting feels harmless while it's happening. That's why it works. I'll sit here a little longer today. Then I'll make myself some tea. That's about all the planning I do now. If this meant something to you, you'll know what to do with it. If not, that's all right too. I've learned that some truths don't need an audience. They just need to be said once before the time to say them runs out. This is where I'll stop.